This is a foo, a herbivore to be exact. It is a passive creature that hops around its environment looking for noms to eat. It's also deadly afraid of carnifooes, a big, bad blue foo that eats herbivores. In this two-part series, I'm going to use these friendly herbivores, frightening carnifooes, and some programming to model Batesian mimicry, a more advanced topic in the general study of evolutionary biology. But before we can get to that, let's focus on modeling the basics of evolution. So what is evolution? The classic graphic of species progressing into other species is completely deceptive, and more often than not, leaves people with a totally wrong understanding of the concept. What evolution is not is the sudden transformation of one species into another. Instead, let's think about it as the slow change in heritable characteristics of a population over many generations. The two general mechanisms through which evolution occurs, and which we'll be basing our model on, are natural selection and genetic mutation. Every time an organism has offspring, there's a small chance that offspring will have genetic mutations in its DNA. This leads to changes in the fitness of the offspring, that is, how well it is suited for its environment. Over many generations, these mutations can lead to drastic changes in the traits of a population. Natural selection, on the other hand, is far less of a random process. Based on an organism's genes, the environment will favor some organisms over others, allowing those favorable organisms to survive and produce offspring, while the less favorable organisms die. For example, let's say we had a population of rabbits living in a snowy biome, with fur coats ranging from white to black. If their environment also contained owls, who hunted them, it would be reasonable to expect that the rabbits with whiter fur who blend in with the snow would survive, whereas those with black fur who stand out would get hunted. The owls represent an environmental selective pressure that over time forces the rabbit population to have whiter and whiter fur. So back to our model. Let's give herbivores 5 traits: speed, how fast they'll move; perception, how much of their environment around them they can see; sex drive, how strong their desire to reproduce is; poisoned, how poisonous they are; and mimicry, how much they pretend to be poisonous. Each herbivore will store a copy of their genetic code in a DNA object. How high a herbivore's stats are correlate directly with the energy they'll need. A fast herbivore with greater perception will require more energy than a slow herbivore who cannot see very far. Our model will have a basic environment filled with grass, trees, and noms. Herbivores will hop around the environment using sphere casting to avoid collisions and find paths to food. The redder a herbivore is, the more poisoned or mimicry it has. When a herbivore is sufficiently fed and has an urge to produce offspring, it will asexually make a child. The child will have the same DNA as their parent, with a small chance for a mutation in a trait to occur. All that's left to do now is to run our simulation. Let's spawn in 20 herbivores with mid-level stats and see what happens to the population. Try and keep track of what happens to the poisonous and mimicking herbivores. Interesting, right? Herbivores who were fast but saw less of their environment survived better, and thus the general population tended towards those traits. Although sex drive didn't burden herbivores with an energy cost, the herbivores who prioritized producing offspring too much or too little died out, whereas middle-level sex drive survived. Poison and mimicry trends point to the fact that herbivores had no predators. Without carnivores, being poisonous or pretending to be poisonous didn't actually help a foo's survival. Since foos who were poisonous or mimicked it required more energy than those who didn't, it was harder for them to meet energy costs, and those herbivores failed to be competitive over time. Just for fun, let's play around with the energy costs associated with different traits. Let's start by making speed require a lot of energy. What do you think will happen? This honestly caught me off guard. Instead of speccing into slower speed and better perception, the herbivores competed amongst each other. Eventually, the population shrunk enormously, but the remaining herbivores were very fast and had a large energy demand. What if we add significant energy costs for having children? Well, we just successfully modeled Japan. That's all for this video. In part 2, the simulation will get more complex. We'll add carnifus and watch how Batesian mimicry comes into play. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.